some percentages in relationship to their values. And I'll tell you this, and I don't know if I've said this to the citizens out there. I was on the county side at one time. I worked for a unified local government in Athens, Clarke. And one of the things, the best thing I've ever done is took a tax appraisal class. And it taught me a valuable lesson, because we often get upset when we get our tax notices and our assessments, because we don't want it to be at those values to pay whatever applicable taxes. But when we sell those properties,
we want to be a little higher.
We want to be higher. We want to be at fair market value. So you can't have both. You can't have one without the other. You got to have it at whatever the fair market value is. And our values have dropped over the past several years because of the economy and everything. So that is a strain on what we are feeling, and with the issue as far as utilities, like Charlie said, that puts more pressure on us as well, not to have to look at potentially more increases. So we've been trying to hold the line, not putting a burden on the utility customers just as much as a burden on the tax paying customers as well. So that's the balancing act that we deal with, especially with everything going on. You want to add anything else from your perspective as far as that?
Well, like I said, the balancing is probably one of the biggest things, because if you look at probably any of our dividing lines, industry versus residential, demographics, social stuff, we're about 50-50 at any given moment on a lot of stuff. And so what's good for grandma is not good for the 20-year-old. What's good for the 20-year-old is not good for your grandma. What's good for the industry is sometimes not good for the residential, and vice versa, whatever. So just a constant balancing act, because like I said, you can pull our statistic and we're about 50-50 at any given moment on anything. So that means at any moment 50% of people are mad at us. And so we only got 50% of people that's pulling for us. But the balancing act is a tough part, like I said, because when you move one thing, it affects something else. And then that's a different group of people or a different group of entities, and they have different motives at that time. And that's tough, because like I said, grandma who's on a fixed income, getting $600-$900 a month on Social Security is different than somebody who's a thriving business at this time, or vice versa, and that's tough.
Right, it is very challenging. Well, I just noticed we got to take a break, so we're going to be taking a break right after these messages.
WDTV 13. Programming is sponsored by
100 Men in Black and Roscoe Allen Company. 100 Men in Black, working to bring unity to our community since 2002.
Dewey Hayes Jr., attorney at law, selected to the top 100 trial lawyers in the state of Georgia.
Boss Riders and Roscoe Allen Company. The Boss Riders, serving the Coffee County community for over 20 years.
If you want your pizza fixed just right, chances are you'll go to Danny's. If you're celebrating a birthday, Holtz is probably fixing the cake you'll put the candles on. And if your wedding ring needs an adjustment, you'll find yourself at Crawford Jewelers. But if it's you who needs fixing, it should definitely happen here. Coffee Regional Medical Center in Douglas, Georgia. We fix things better here.
We're back with more Douglas on My Mind, and once again I have Charlie Davis, our Assistant City Manager and Finance Director, and we've been talking about budgets, we've been talking about economic impact, and all things related to numbers and finance in regards to the city, and what a lot of numbers and issues that we deal with. But one of the biggest expenses that we have that I want him to just mention is something that a lot of people don't really understand, and specifically as they deal with local government. So what is that biggest expense?
Our biggest expense, like most places, is personnel costs. It covers, I don't know if I think I put the numbers in, around 60% of our general fund budget goes to personnel costs. That's their salaries, that's their health insurance, that's their workman's comp, retirement, anything that deals with having that employee on the job. So out of our 100% that goes towards general fund, 6%, so we got 40% left basically to meet the needs of citizens, whether it's sidewalks or policing or whatever. You know, and the more you grow, and like I said, one of the things we've been doing here lately over the last 3 years is our personnel dollars have gone down because we have shed personnel. And so we've been trying to manage that personnel because like I said, we're not getting more revenue, we're not raising taxes, and we're not really increasing transfers of utilities. So the biggest thing is personnel, and we never want to lay off or have a reduction in force, but right timing where people were either retiring or we offered early retirement through attrition, we've been able to shrink personnel costs. And one of the things we've been doing is we've been managing our healthcare costs. You know, we've gone from, like most industries or most government entities, from free choice, going anywhere you want to what we call selective plans, narrow focused plans. It does take some of the choice away, but at the same time we can get scales of economy of more bang for our buck at these industries, at these hospitals and providers that we choose. And so we've been seeing some reduction in costs there, or maybe not reduction, but not increasing in cost.
Right.
Workman's comp, I think we're trying to focus on that now, and we probably need to focus more on it because we do have a lot of rolling stock out there, and we do have, we have all different type of workers. We got, firemen, we've got police, we've got public works type. So we have all, at any given moment, the potential of high workman's comp. And so we've been trying to put in place some workman comp things to see that shrink.
Right. Well, and I'm probably not, I'm just going to glaze over this to help people understand. We've done some things with Mayor Commission involvement, and we appreciate their commitment to it. But, when I came to the city of Douglas some years ago, 7 years ago now, one of the things that I've often expressed is our benefit package to our employees are very, very lucrative. We have a very attractive package in regards to that. But with anything that you do, just like we're seeing across the United States right now with health insurance, it is very challenging to keep affording certain levels of benefits to employees. So we've had to do, such as other people had to analyze our benefit offerings and look at whatever reductions, look at whatever modifications that make sense. You can't sustain the level of things that you may have been able to do in the past now with everything that's challenging upon you. And that's challenging to look at the doing, but we've been very fortunate not to do some very drastic things, make austerity type of cuts such as furloughs and do some other drastic things that put a strain on you. But those types of things can't be sustainable for any indefinite period of time. You're going to have to do some things that make meaningful cost reductions, and benefits make up a significant amount. I would say probably 40% in regards to our costs in relationship to that personnel cost in that regard. So it is something that you got to look at, and I know there might be some discussion out there, some chat about things that we have done in regards to that. So I'm just summarizing that, but hope that you as a viewer understand that we have been purposeful trying to help the city get in a financially good position long term. Because my thought process is I would want the next generation of employees to be able to have some level of good benefits going forward and have some level of confidence that the city of Douglas is going to make payroll and do the things that they need to do to take care of their employees long term. And some of our cities across this great United States, and I'll go ahead and throw out one in mind, Detroit, who was doing very, very, shall we say, lucrative things towards their employees that they could not sustain. And now they're in a situation that they have had to file bankruptcy. I mean, who would have thought that cities in this great nation that we live in would have to file bankruptcy? But that's the days that we live in, and we're very fortunate that our city leaders have been very forward-thinking about what we need to start doing. So as you hear stuff out there, understandably, there's purpose behind what we're trying to do, and a lot of times people here in our community don't really understand what's going on right outside of our county, city and county limits, but there are cities across this great nation that are in financial challenge because they have not made some tough decisions early on, and now they're not in a good position going forward. I mean, it's bad when you got to have the federal government to come in and take over a city that can't run itself. So we're blessed and fortunate that we've not had to do that. So that's enough of my little soapbox commentary, but I just want to put that out there so everybody understands as they may hear stuff or may see things that come forth. Talk about some nuts and bolts a little bit. I don't want you to get too much in the fray here, but a lot of times people don't understand what taxes mean. They don't understand how it relates to some dollar figures, meals, and I'm trying to. We often sometimes confuse citizens about a meal of taxes and a meal of electric, and I think people, really, so maybe help us clarify some of that and give us some perspective of how does that relate to our customers out there and dollars, so to speak. So just general terms.
Well, like I said, basically our two sets of revenues for the general fund is your utilities and your tax base. Tax is based on what we call a meal, and one meal equals around $302,000. Right now, our current millage is 8.51. We give a meal of that to the industrial authority or the economic development authority, and that helps them build. Like you see now, Joey and them is building the industrial authority. I mean the spec building out there, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's where that one meal in the county matches that too with theirs, and that goes for that. But so we net out 7.51 meal. So that's 7.5 times 300,000. So we get about 2.5 million in taxes, property taxes, to our 13.5 million general fund budget. So that shows you out of 13.5 million, we only collecting 2.5 million. And so that's where then the utilities come in to place there. So when we was talking of one meal, and that's in reference to electric rates, one meal on electric rate equals around $286,000, which is almost about the same, equates out as far as overall budget. One meal is almost the same thing as a tax meal versus electric, but it's totally different animals. One's on the electric rate, and so electric's always a controversial one, but the residentials pay around $6 million a year, which is 20% of the electric budget. So that leaves 80% that comes from our commercial/industries out there. And the wastewater, the residential pays about 39% of the total budget. On the gas, the residents pay around 8% of it. And then industry, cause we're heavily gas right now, and our gas is growing. One of the things we're doing there is CNG. We're growing poultry housing. So right now, and as our climate has changed, a lot of people that used to be on natural gas or propane even
for heating,
for heating purposes now have switched over to electric. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. But our industry has just boomed, and actually we've got 2 or 3 more people wanting us to run lines to them, and so the natural gas is really has grown there. Sanitation, residents pay about 47% of the total overall budget. So even though we hear a lot from our residential customers, the industry is the biggest part of our utilities. And like I said, but going back, a meal on electric is about the same as a meal of taxes there. The next breakdown is talking about the breakdown of our overall budget. Mm-hmm. Where does our money come from in the general fund? About 21% of our money comes from ad valorem taxes, sales tax based revenues, whether it's loss receipts, local option sales tax, those type of funds. About 18% comes from sales tax based. What we call utility reimbursement. Even though they may be in the utility departments, like part of your salary, part of the finance's salary and benefits, part of the customer service, all those are direct parts of those facilities, so that's what we call utility reimbursements. That comes about 15%. Utility transfers, that's just money that we have transferred from them to us, is about 34%. And then other revenues, fines, forfeitures, business license come up around 12% of our budget.
So as you can hear, a lot of different things, but that all totals up for the whole pie, 100% of what it takes to facilitate general fund. And as you can see, ad valorem only makes up 21% of that. So the other 79% comes from those other sources. So I know a lot of people affectionately say, well, my taxes go, well,